Hello everyone, my name is Ibukun Williams. Anyways, before I start today, as always, I have a plant to show you guys and introduce to you guys today. So I'm gonna bring it out. Guys, this is the Sansevieria, but it's also known as mother-in-law's tongue, or some people call it the snake plant. And they usually call it snake plant majorly because of the way the skin looks. Obviously, it looks like a snake. Actually, snake plants is one of the few plants on the planet that actually produces oxygen both during the day and during the night. So if you're thinking about one of those plants that you want to put indoor in your room, and would give you a very clear, air and clean air, this is one of those to have. Also, because the snake plant removes toxins from the environment. So imagine the kind of person that keeps your house clean, you mop the floor with some soap, some bleach, and some stuff. Just think about it. Yes, snake plant tends to suck in, absorbing all those toxins and actually clears the atmosphere. So you want to have this in your house. You can keep it indoor, outdoor, wherever. It's a very common plant here in Nigeria. A lot of people have it, mostly outdoor, but most people don't know the benefits. That's why maybe they don't keep it indoor. But yeah, you should have a lot of this indoor. If you can have it everywhere in your house, it'll be perfect for your health, perfect for your breathing, perfect for everything. Think about it. It is one that you should definitely have. I cannot overemphasize this plant. It's a very beautiful one. I've propagated tons of this plant. I've given a lot out to people. I mean, this is one of my favorite plants. This one is totally looking green, this one I'm showing you, but I have a lot that I can even show you on the screen right now. They come in yellow, they come in small, different shapes and sizes. And there are other ones that have a full green look. There's some that have like a very slim, long style that looks like a cane. So yeah, guys, this is snake plant, also known as mother-in-law's tongue. And yeah, you should definitely have one of these. Actually, I want to talk about a subject called synchronicity. This is something that a lot of us don't necessarily have a grasp on. It's something that happens to most of us, but we're trying to understand whether we're being very spiritual or our minds are just connecting the dots. Have you ever thought about somebody just comes to your mind and suddenly they call you? Or you decide that you want to buy a particular car or a vehicle and you start to see that vehicle everywhere when you go out. You are probably struggling with a phrase or a concept, and suddenly as you're moving on the road, you see it on the billboard and it's just like, wow, it was waiting for you. To be honest, some of these moments feel too precise. They feel too planned. And trust me, they're not necessarily random events. This is what we call synchronicity. So here lies the question. Is the universe actually sending you signs, or is just your mind trying to connect the dots? This is what I want to talk about today. Carl Jung defined the term synchronicity in the 1920s. He called it meaningful coincidence, where a couple of events are connected not by cause or effect, but by meaning. Jung collaborated with the physicist Wolfgang Pauli, who tried to define that the material world and the mind actually come from the same underlying pattern, the same source or the same place, I could say. Generally, the human mind has evolved to connect dots to create meaning for survival. We're trying to plan ahead, we're trying to think about some things, so we're able to connect a lot of things together generally as the mind. But if through a lot of research and even through experiences, people are beginning to question the idea that the coincidences are too strong and too meaningful for it to just be a random event. Rather, there is something hidden behind this thing. From the spiritual or esoteric point of view, ancients believed that the universe is trying to communicate with you through some of these patterns, where once your consciousness is, or your mind, or your state of being is aligned with a particular path, the universe is beginning to connect to you and try to communicate with you through some of these patterns. There are some of us who tend to just randomly look at the time and see numbers like 1111 or 555, and from the spiritual point of view, they tend to say that you are actually being notified of something, or you're trying to be connected to something. But I'd like to first of all, go into the idea of consciousness. We're looking at it from the esoteric point of view. What really is consciousness, or what is intelligence on a higher scale? I think about it a lot and I say to myself, intelligence in itself is a connection that is informed, that has a knowing, a knowledge, and can act on that type of knowledge, so to speak. As a human being, you have a lot of neurons in your head, in your brain, and they're connecting. So because of that connection, they're able to create a meaning to what you're experiencing in life. For example, you see a road and your brain can detect and see the lines and see the patterns and say, okay, this is a road. And when you want to cross that road, your brain is able to detect the cars passing and everything. This is called intelligence generally. But if you even think about it, intelligence, in my own opinion, or I could put it from the conscious point of view, could also be a connection of other intelligences. Does that make sense? But a combining of intelligence from different parts of the system to create a higher form of intelligence. For example, the intelligence that you express as a human, as yourself, as you define yourself, can still be broken down to your little cells, right? Each cell in your body has its own form of intelligence. So the red blood cells, the white blood cells, your stem cells, and every single thing inside you is connected with some form of individual intelligence. The white blood cells know what they're supposed to do in your body, separate from the red blood cells. And even when other things occur in your body, like diseases or changes in your environment, the weather, the temperature, or whatever it is that happens to you, your cells and your body is able to connect with each other and decide what to do with that information that it is receiving. So in that regard, when that intelligence is combined together in a body, in our lymphatic system and the whole system that is built within us, we can then call ourselves human, right? And even in animals, you see some level of intelligence too. And I would even give you an example of a school of fish, for example. You see, there are some fish where they have their own individual intelligence, right? But then they combine together and you see them swim in the ocean together as one form of intelligence. And it gets to a point where when something is coming to attack or something is coming to affect their balance, they kind of have a way of communicating with each other and they move away or decide what to do in that moment as one body, not necessarily as an individual or individual fish, but as a school, So basically, what I'm saying is that if intelligence in itself can combine to form a higher form of intelligence, that means that you as a human who is intelligent in your own space, in your own setting, can also combine with other forms of intelligence and become a higher form of intelligence. So in this world, we tend to call things like this collective consciousness, where all of us as humans are combining our intelligence to create a world that we want to express, or a world that we want to experience, if I put it that way. So when it comes to synchronicity, there is a chance where you could actually be connecting to some higher form of intelligence. You could actually be downloading from a higher form of data. Some people could call it the ether, but then again, you could actually be connecting to an intelligence that you don't necessarily have an idea of how it works, but it is there in itself working for you. There is always this statement that flies around and says, as within, so without, or as above, so below. If you really think about it, the universe is actually mirroring your consciousness. It's called resonance, basically, mirroring your consciousness to guide your path. So basically, it's almost like the energy that you put out, or the expression that your mind or your brain or your own spirit is putting out, is being mirrored in a way to guide your spirit to where your spirit is or wants to go, basically. So basically, if you think about it from this angle, it's almost like when, like I said earlier, you want to buy a car, for example, and you suddenly decide that, okay, this is the specific car that I want to buy, or maybe this is the specific color of the car that I want to buy. Suddenly, when you go out on the road or you go out anywhere, you start to see that car randomly on the road. Before then, you were not necessarily noticing that particular vehicle. But then suddenly, because you've decided to put that energy out, the universe, in a sense, is guiding your path to make sure that that information is true to you. So if you think about it, you always want to look at the negativity in every situation, or you're always looking for the problem in a situation, or you're looking for how to feel sad, or you're currently looking for how to feel self-pity. You could even be looking for opportunities, or currently always looking to be grateful for every situation that you're in. In that regard, your brain is trying to, your mind, or I would say, let's not even talk about it logically now, the universe is trying to make that information that you're putting out true for you. So suddenly, when you step out into the environment, that is what you begin to notice. That is what you begin to observe in your environment. If you look at a situation that occurs somewhere, two people having that exact same experience can actually derive two different meanings from that experience because of the energy that they've come to meet with that experience, if I could put it that way. So from a spiritual point of view, when you are in deep alignment with a particular type of energy, that energy in a way tends to mirror itself back to you in every single aspect of your life. This is not just you about buying a vehicle. This is almost you about every single emotion that you feel during the day and the meaning that you give to those emotions or those occurrences that happen to you. But if you think about it from the logical point of view as well, if we think about it from the material world, we tend to say that what your mind basically is trying to do or trying to experience repeatedly, your brain will try to find truth in that particular thing. So just like the vehicle situation, your mind has decided that this is what I'm trying to find, and your mind, or I could say your brain, is trying to make that true for you. But if you connect the spiritual parts and the logical parts together, they don't necessarily cancel each other. You can't necessarily say you totally cut out the spiritual end of it and everything is just your mind connecting the dots. Rather, you could also say that they can actually be connected with each other because maybe they are actually coming from the same source. So looking at it from these two lenses, from the logical point of view or from the esoteric point of view, you could see that they are actually trying to define or explain the same concept, but from different angles. We could say the logical is more of mechanism and the esoteric is more of meaning. So my point generally is that, synchronicity is not just random. It is actually a real thing, and you have to actually stay observant more than actually putting meaning to what is occurring to you. In the world that we live in today, observation is the best way to separate yourself or detach yourself from the situation. If a situation happens to you that will naturally get you angry as a person, in fact, right now, ask yourself that question: what makes me angry? Now, whatever the answer is to that question, what makes you angry, is going to be different for every single person watching this video, right? Meaning that what is making them angry is a product of your own conditioning and your own ego. So if that particular thing makes you angry, who is the you that it makes angry? That you is somebody that has been created, meaning that person or that entity could be recreated. So if you then detach yourself from that meaning that you've given to that situation, this particular thing makes me angry, which may not make somebody else angry, but it's making you angry. But then you detach yourself from the situation and not necessarily make you angry, but then let it become the observer in the situation. You're opening yourself to more meanings to that situation. Now, when you become the observer rather than the actor in the play, you are able to then define how you want the play to go. You cannot be controlling or obsessive or trying to take control of everything occurring to you. You have to observe. You have to notice patterns. You can't force anything. So if you're talking about synchronicity and knowing what to do with synchronicity when it comes, I would advise that generally as a person, whether you have the spiritual point of view, the logical point of view, or whatever point of view you see or you see deemed fit for the situation, try and do something that is above any spiritual opinion that you have or any religious opinion that you have. And this situation is something that you can actually work with as a person, as a human. The fact that you have a beating heart and a mind and a spirit, this is your power. This is your strength. The first step is to detach from the situation. For example, when the mystics talk about meditation, meditation in itself is not about just sitting down saying or just trying to just be quiet or sitting down in a random place. True meditation is about being able to detach yourself from your mind and not be controlled or ruled by your mind. So you sit down in one spot, you quiet your mind, you sit up straight, and then you begin to just maybe observe your breath or observe your thoughts. Let's go into the topic of observing your thoughts. When you begin to observe your thoughts, what happens is that thoughts that are good come to your mind, thoughts that are bad come to your mind. And at that point, when you see those thoughts, you have to be able to detach yourself from them and just look at those thoughts and say, this is just a thought. Do not judge the thought. Do not even say this thought is good or this thought is bad. Do not judge the thought at all. Just look at it as this is a thought. And that is it. That is all. That is actually the first step to understand when synchronicity occurs, or even generally for your life. Now, you start to detach yourself. You start to become the observer. You remove paranoia, basically. You start to become the observer in every situation, because the fact is that whatever situation happens or occurs to you, it can have so many different meanings. So first of all, you have to be the observer. Another step you can do is actually to start to journal some of these events as they occur. Over time, you might be able to see patterns that will help you in a guiding path to make decisions in life generally. Another thing you want to do is to actually check your inner state. Whenever some of these things are occurring, try and sit down and observe, what was I thinking about when this happened? How do I feel in this moment? What is actually happening to me in this particular moment? You know, it could be your mind trying to connect a dot of a question that you've generally asked yourself. Sometimes people say, sometimes there are methods where you actually want to go sleep, you have a problem that you're trying to solve, and when you're actually going to bed, you ask yourself, okay, how do I solve this problem? What is the solution to this problem? And then you sleep and let your brain do the work. Most of the time, your brain can actually do the work, and when you wake up in the morning, or even when you wake up in the morning, maybe not immediately when you wake up, or even through the next day, somehow, some way, you find a solution to that particular problem because you've put it into your subconscious mind to do the work. If you actually think about it, your subconscious mind does 30% of all your functions, and your actual conscious mind does only 30% of it. Generally, synchronicities tend to mirror what your inner emotions are like, what your inner expressions are like, what you feel within yourself. So in that moment, you actually want to sit down and observe. I keep using this word observe. It cannot be overemphasized. You have to be the observer. You do not act in the play. You have to be the one watching the play. Another thing I would say about synchronicities is that you actually have to let them be signposts and not destinations. You know, so a lot of people think that sometimes, you know, they could just suddenly think about somebody and say, oh, the fact that this person came to my mind, that means this person is the person causing my problem. Or they dream about somebody and they say, oh, yes, I saw my grandmother in the dream, so it's true, she's the one disturbing my life. But really, the reason why you saw your grandmom in the dream, you never really know. Maybe you were thinking about it already deeply, thinking that maybe she's the problem in your life, and then you dream about it. It doesn't necessarily mean she's the problem. You're beginning to give meaning to it. You don't give meaning to it. Rather, you just use it as a signpost, as a guiding path to help you understand what is going on deep within your mind. Most of us don't really know what is deep within our mind because it is deep within the subconscious. In fact, a lot of us don't know how we will react in certain situations. It's until when those situations occur before we actually know how we will react, most of the time after the reaction. Now, whether synchronicities are whispers of the universe or echoes of the mind, it reminds us that life is not as mechanical as it seems. Meaning isn't found, it is created through the dialogue between your inner world and the infinite web outside, the higher intelligence that I could say. Intelligence, or we could say the collective consciousness. We could say it this way: what if reality is actually listening to you and these coincidences occurring are actually the replies of life or the universe trying to respond to the things that are happening to you? One thing I want you to understand or relate to right now is that whatever energy you put out will definitely reflect to you, just like you say, as above, so below, as within, so without. Without night, you cannot actually define day. Without day, you cannot define night. If night didn't exist, then you cannot call day day. Because for you to call it day, then there has to be night. So generally, the energy you put out is what you receive. The way you look at life is the way life will look at you. Life basically mirrors your emotions, your feelings, your state of being. So if you continue to express a state of gratitude, life will show gratitude to you. If you continue to express a state of sadness or self-pity or horror or shame, or a lot of lower vibrations, that is what would be returned and mirrored to you in different forms. Now, if we're going to break this down, there's so many ways we can actually break this down, but I would just like to cap it here and say that synchronicity is something that I believe is real, both from the spiritual, esoteric point of view and even the logic point of view. It happens to me all the time. Sometimes I just randomly check my phone and I'm seeing 1111, I've seen 444, and these numbers are always coming to me. Or I think about somebody and they call me immediately, or I just, you say, some people say, yes, your spirit is very strong. No, you're not a bastard. As we say in Nigeria, they say you're not a bastard. But if you notice, this thing actually happens to everybody, which is more or less an evidence, maybe not so scientific in a sense, but more or less an evidence that says that we are actually more connected than we think that we are. So basically, for you to be able to maximize this connectivity, be open to the idea that some of these things are really, really connected in a certain way. So try not to create meaning from it, but rather be the observer and continue to observe your inner states, your outer states, and everything around that. I don't know if I've made sense today, but anyways, if you're loving this discussion, please drop a like on this video. I would really appreciate your like. Means a lot to me. I want to celebrate over 100 hours of watch time on my YouTube channel currently, and I have over 100 subscribers. So thank you to all the people who have subscribed to this channel. Your subscription means a lot to me, and I am so grateful for that. And the more you subscribe, the more you comment, the more you share these videos, you give me more motivation to actually make more stuff for you. I'm going to be talking about a lot more things. So guys, if you actually found this video without even thinking about it, what if synchronicity is already occurring? Maybe this message is for you to open up your mind and open up your state of being to the idea that you are not the actor, but you are the watcher. So start to watch. My name is Bukun Williams. See you guys next time. Bye.